What is up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another video. Today I have a pretty exciting one for you. I feel like you guys enjoy these types of videos, which is a full engine rebuild. I did a very similar engine rebuild on my old video. You can check it out. It's a 2012 KX250F, full top to bottom. And if that's something you like, definitely give it a click. And today's gonna be very similar. It's gonna be a 2011 CRF250r. And the backstory in this engine was, it was rebuilt by some shop or someone and it didn't run. I feel like it ran for 30 seconds or a minute, I'm not entirely sure. And then was put on the shelf and it was just been collecting dust. So you can see that it's filthy, and I'm gonna be replacing pretty much everything on it. Like I said, full top to bottom, new crank, new bearings, new transmission bearings, piston cylinder is gonna be brand new. The head is gonna be sent out because the head is pretty much shot. The valves are all, anyways, I'm gonna show you here in a second. So it's gonna be a brand new engine. And yeah, I hope to get this thing back together, get it fired up, and put it back on the track. So let's get started. Alright guys, so as you can see, I got the cases split open the rest of the way. The center here, where the main bearings are, it is definitely a little crunchy. Lots of dirt in there and lots of different chunks of whatever fell inside from over the years. Train looks pretty good, but like I said, we're going to be replacing these bearings. It's just best to do so. It's cracked open, and you know, it's the best thing that you can do while you're in here. And the transmission itself looks really good. All the gears are here. The spacers are here. Drum looks good. These forks look, well, once I take it apart, I will see how they look. And these pins themselves look good too. So everything is here. And what I'm going to do is probably just shove this entire case into an oven. Bearings are going to pop right out. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side as well. And then hopping over here, I already took this head apart. As you can see, I popped the valves out just to see what we're dealing with. And you can see that these valves are worn. The edges of the valves here on top, they are like caved in. So that means these valves are totally done. I would not reuse these. And if you do put new valves into a used head, you're not doing yourself any good, because they're just gonna wear themselves in just like these are, and it's going to prematurely pretty much wear out, and you're gonna find yourself reshimming the valves more often than you should be. So as you can see, there is one valve in there that is stuck, and I don't want to force it out because I don't want to damage the guides or the guide on this one. So I'm going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to send it out to Millennium just like this, and I'd rather have them do it, and if there is damage, they'll be able to repair it right away. And I already ordered OEM new valves, so waiting for those in the mail. Once they're here, I'll send everything out. And a quick way to check whether you have titanium valves or steel valves is just to use a magnet. So if it is titanium, it's not going to stick. But if your valves are steel, they're going to stick. So that's the best and easiest way you can quickly figure out what kind of valves you have, because Hondas, they use half and half. The exhausts are going to be steel, intakes are going to be titanium. I got all my parts laid out here. As you can see, I'm going over everything, making sure that everything is in working and good condition. And this is one good way to see, you know, if you are missing any sort of parts. And I even found some parts inside the engine whenever I cracked it open the rest of the way. There were some bolts just kind of sitting on the inside. So I went over everything and look at what I found. This gear right here, this is the oil pump gear. It looks all right, but on the inside, it is all chewed up. And if you look at the gear itself, also all chewed up. And here is the main damage. So this gear is toast. Somehow it just got chewed up, and I feel like because of this, the engine was not working properly. The timing could have been off or jumped a tooth, I don't know. But another thing that I noticed on the piston is those valve marks right here. So somehow the piston was going up and down, and it kept slapping the valves. As the valves were being pushed out, the piston was hitting them. That could only be two things. Either the timing was set incorrectly, or there was valve float. So hopping back over here, here are the two shims that I pulled off on the intake side, which is this stuck valve, and you can see how blue these shims are, especially this one. So I think because of that oil pump failure, there was not enough oil on the top end, so the shims were overheated. And I don't know if you can tell, but the edges of the shim, they are sharp. So pretty much the bucket and the valve itself was squishing this shim together, and that could be because of the piston going up and down. So obviously there are a couple issues that went wrong at the same time in this engine, and I don't know if the damage occurred from one thing to another leading to another, or it could be just, you know, separate issues kind of happening at the same time. But either way, I'm glad I figured everything out. I put an order in on everything that we need. And like I mentioned before, this head is going to go out. It's going to be reworked by Millennium Technologies, and we're going to receive a super nice product back in the mail. And this engine is going to be put back together and looking good. All right, so saved you guys from sitting there watching me clean. I got these engine cases all prepped, all cleaned up. New bearings are ready to be installed. Over here, I have the original ones, original seals. The worst part about cleaning this thing was actually getting the old gasket off. I believe it's an original just because of how old it was, how crusty, and how hard it was to get it off. So if this bottom end was taken apart, it definitely was not. I think whoever had this engine in their shop, they definitely lied about that if that was the case. But anyways, gonna get the new bearings in, get new seals in, and put this thing back together. Wanted to show you guys all the parts. Got a brand new piston kit along with a cylinder works cylinder, and as you can see, all OEM parts for the most part, all new trainee bearings. We have a whole baggie here full of seals, valves, got more bearings here, more seals, timing chain, filter. Anyways, gaskets over here OEM, and I got some Rocky Mountain ones too. But anyways, so that's all the parts that I have. All right, so I got everything laid out here, all the tools I'll be needing to get this bearing and all the other bearings installed. Here's the main bearing that is on the right case, and as you can see here, there is a lip, so it goes in one direction. Make sure that this lip is pointing into the center of the engine. There are two bolts that sit here, and they retain this bearing inside. And I have a 72mm driver right here. Got my hammer and MAP gas. MAP gas burns a lot hotter, and it'll get these cases nice and hot a lot quicker. And I usually just start heating it up until I start seeing smoke. When I see that, that is generally the sign for me to put these in. I did not put these in a freezer. It would be a good idea to do it. It'll kind of make the metal shrink a little bit, and heat makes aluminum expand, so they should be sliding in pretty easy. But it's been pretty cold in the garage, about 30 degrees for about 24 hours now. It's 60 now in here, but like I said, I forgot to put them in the freezer, so we'll see if they fit right in. If not, this is your best friend. It'll make that bearing go right in. All right, step one. All right, I don't know if you can see that, but it is smoking now, so I'm gonna place it down. Oh, just barely made it in there. Make sure you get your bearing driver and it's big enough to fit around the entire bearing. So if you are using a bearing driver, as you are driving it in, you should hear a distinct sound of when it contacts the actual case. The thud from the hammer is going to sound different, and you'll know that you are bottomed out. So this bearing, it's seated entirely, and one other way to check is actually take this retainer and sit it flat. It should not be rocking back and forth. It should sit directly on the case and on that lip of the bearing. So there it is. Sits nice and flat. I can put these little bolts in there. We're going to Loctite them in. By the way, throughout this entire project, I'm going to be using Stuck Nuts thread locker. Check them out. It'll be linked down in the description below. There will also be a discount code. Use it. Get yourself some Stuck Nuts. Support the local guys. This stuff is really good. And these guys are out there trying to keep our trails open. Give them a click. See what it's all about. All right, I'm going to move on to the transmission bearings. You are going to want this sealed part facing down. That one went in super easy. Let's see if we can get the other one while it's still hot. Slid right in. Gonna heat it up a little bit. I feel like it cooled down. Again, sealed portion facing down. I wasn't quick enough. It only went in halfway. I don't know if you can hear it on camera, but the tone changed once it bottomed out. All right, so there you have it. Everything's installed. All the bearings went in nice and smoothly. Some needed a little more persuasion than others, but all that's left now is to put on the retainers. There's 6 of them total here. And once everything cools down, I'm gonna coat everything in this assembly lube, make sure everything's all coated up before we put the cases together. All right, so I like to do these by hand. I can use my impact, but that's a little dangerous. You really have to know your impact pretty well. I can use it on this. I know I won't over torque them, but just this portion, I definitely like doing it by hand. Alright, this side's all done. Gonna wipe it up, wait for it to cool down. I'm gonna put on this assembly lube all over the bearings, get them nice and coated, and we should be good for the crank assembly. I usually like to start on the right side. I'll slide it in and I'll put the cases together. And the reason why I don't coat them in assembly lube right now is because the cases are hot. That assembly lube is gonna get like very liquidy and it's just gonna drip out. But when it's cold, it's nice and tacky and it stays in one spot. Same story, gonna heat everything up, and then we'll slide the bearings in. Totally forgot to press record, but got the new bearings on the left side all in. Let's get the last one in. Boom. All right, this side's complete. I just got to put in those retainers and the bolts. There's 1, 2. Oh, there's only 2 on this side. The main bearing doesn't have one. So, proving my point here, you don't have to put these bearings into the freezer. It will help you, but if you forget to or whatever, you will be fine. Just heat the cases up really well until it's smoking, and that way you know that they're ready to be put in. So, just a little workaround. If you forget, don't worry. You can still do it. I know there might be a comment in this video about why am I not peening them here. Well, from stock, from the factory, they're not. And they didn't come loose. So, kind of tells me I don't have to either. Just make sure you get a big enough screwdriver that you're not stripping these out so that it hooks on real well. The last order of business is going to be this little oil sprayer that sits right here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw a little bit, just a drop of assembly lube in there. I clean this out with brake cleaner so I know the passageways are all clean. Get it nice and snug. Gonna get these bearings all coated up. All right. So these forks, one's going to be labeled L, one's going to be labeled R. That way you will not mix them up. Always check this, I don't know, what would you call it, a pin, shift fork pin. I've heard stories where there were defects or there's damage and the fork itself won't slide on it. People wonder why they can't get out of gear. So always check, take out a fork leg. Here, we'll do that now. Just slide it the whole way. It should be smooth without a problem. Always check the tips as well. Make sure they're not worn through. Also the manual gives you a thickness measurement right here, so you can measure it and make sure that you're within spec. When everything is in neutral, these 2 shafts should spin entirely independently of each other. There she is. Alright, here's a brand new oil pump gear. The old one was all pitted up. So some situations I'm not able to do that, so I actually have a case puller. You can attach it on this side or the other side and it'll squeeze these cases together, but this one's pretty easy. A couple love taps and everything's together. And the bolts around the case, that's gonna shut this thing together the rest of the way. One thing you want to always keep in mind is keep checking your crank as you are tightening all the bolts. If your crank pretty much stops moving freely as you tighten everything, there's something wrong, something's in the way, so you might have to pull it back apart and try to figure out what's going on. Comments are gonna go crazy, I already know, because I'm gonna use impact. Don't worry guys, I'm just seating it. I like to slowly work on all four corners. So now I'm going to go in by hand. Just wait till my elbow clicks. And I know I'm good. Once you got everything tightened down, check the crank. Perfect. Nice and smooth. We're going to cut off this gasket. You want to get it as close as you can to the case. There's going to be a little cutout portion right there. It's flat. That is going to go right here facing this dot, because there's going to be a dot here and that can confuse you. You're going to try to line it up with that, but it's not going to go on, so you have to line it up with the notch. There it is. There it is. This gear is going to have the same thing. Line it up with the notch. Countershaft balancer. It's going to get inserted from the other side. So you want to line it up with these two outer marks. Here's this one right here. Then we want to mark up these. There we go. One more gear. Again, flat spot. That's on there. I will torque it down later. You want to line up this notch with that pin on the shift drum. Only goes in one way. Then we're going to red Loctite this one. Link down description. Blue thread locker. Alright, finally got this thing on here. Really hard to explain how to get it on, but pretty much this wheel, I left it on top here as I put the whole thing on, and I just pressed down, pulled the spring with a spring puller, pressed down on his arm till it was pretty much in position, and then let it go, and then it pretty much seated in place, and then screwed the bolt in. Okay, so now we can put this back. I'm going to put in this, I don't know what it's called, but pretty much it engages where it pushes the rod. When I know it's seated correctly, the rod should fall through into its place. There it is. So when you squeeze the lever, this will push these plates apart and allow the clutch to spin freely, allowing you to idle the bike. So these clutch bolts, I never like to actually even use a torque wrench on these, just because I don't know who wrenched on this bike previously and they might have already stripped one of these, and if I use a torque wrench it could just strip it the rest of the way, and that's gonna suck. I always do these by hand. Let's spin everything around, making sure everything works. So now I might have to pop off the water pump cover so that I can spin the gear. So now, there we go. Alright, this side of the engine is complete. Okay, so this is probably the most crucial part of an engine build. I mean, the bottom end is pretty crucial as well, but if you don't have your ring end gap set properly, you don't have the correct piston measured to the cylinder that you have, you can have all sorts of issues. You can have blow by, you can blow up your top end, it can seize on you if you put it together incorrectly. So you just want to have everything done by spec, by the book. And Vertex here, we're using the Vertex piston size A. They give you everything in here. So your ring end gap here is for your 4 strokes, 2 strokes. They have everything laid out for you here. Let's see, they have all sorts of clearances here that you can use and measure. So this is very crucial on your build. And then the orientation and the positioning of all your rings is also very, very important. So you just want to have them set properly. And especially this oil ring too, there's a certain way that I believe it goes on correctly. They don't do a really good job here of showing which way to put it on, but I know Weisico recommends that you, I don't know if you're able to see that, but the ends, either they touch together pointing up or they can be pointing down. There, you can see it like that. So I know Weisico pistons, they tell you to have these faces, the ends facing up. So I've been installing it that way ever since, and I'm just going to do that same thing here. Another thing, whenever you have a brand new cylinder, especially from Cylinder Works, you want to go ahead and wash it with soap and water, because there is, I can even feel it with my hands, there's just dust, there's little particles of sand, because they do paint these things. There's a coating on here, but they blast them before, so definitely want to get everything cleaned out, blown out with compressed air. That way it's ready for install. Super simple. There is lettering on this main ring right here. You can see it right there. Always facing up. Facing up, you always want to have the letter facing up. These other 2 thinner rings, it does not matter on the orientation. And like I said, on the oil ring, we're going to have I'm going to call them crowns, the crown facing up, the 2 ends facing up. So you definitely want to gap your rings. You want to check all of them. The oil ring, you don't have to do that one, but the others you definitely do. So we're going to get our piston ready. Okay, so we're going to start off with the very most top ring. Alright, so the spec here, minimum ring gap per inch bore, 4 strokes. So I like to go by millimeters here, 0.10 to 0.20. So that is the minimum gap. So we're going to measure this one. Slides in nice and easy. 0.20. So let's see if... Okay, that feels pretty good. These Cylinder Works kits, they come in pretty much in spec. You still want to check them just so you can check it off your list. You never know, maybe you'd have to shave down the ends a little bit. But in my experience, these kits come in ready to go. We'll do the next ring. So 0.20. Perfect. Do the last one. Perfect. So there you go. Now I'm going to wash the cylinder up, and we're going to go ahead with the install. Alright, so I just washed the cylinder with some clean, soapy, hot water. Everything looks good. Blow it out. Get a good coating of oil. This is just regular 10W40. I know you can use, some guys will use WD-40 and all that, which is fine, but on a fresh build, there's no need to use WD-40. Better to use quality products. WD-40 can technically be like a cleaner. Unfortunately, I know there are other mechanics out there on the YouTubes where they use WD-40 on everything, including plastics and inside the engine. I think when you're in a pinch, it's fine, but just use quality things, guys. That's the key to everything. Put quality in, you get quality out. All right, cylinder's ready to go. Time to get these rings on here. So I like to start with this oil ring and make sure they are not overlapping each other, that they are just pretty much head-butting. And then these small oil rings, one's gonna go on top, one's on the bottom. So I like to stagger my endpoints all over. So I'll probably do one here, one here, one here, one here. So that's 4 rings. All right, so I got everything on here. So you can see there's one gap, that's the bottom ring. Oil ring end gaps are touching right here. And then top ring is right here, and lastly the top ring, the thickest one, is facing this way. Alright, that slid in nice and easy. I'm going to quickly test. Okay, so it is time to get this head situated, get it all assembled. As you can see, it looks a lot different than it did in the beginning of the video. Millennium Technologies knocked this thing out of the park. They replaced all 4 seats, all 4 guides. One of the guides was actually cracked. I had no idea about that. The other seats, pretty much all the seats were within spec, but they were teetering on being out of spec, so it was just best to get everything replaced. New seats cut in. All I did was just sent them an intake valve and an exhaust, and they fitted everything, make sure everything is within spec, brand new. They also returned the valve that was stuck inside the head, and they even wrote on there that the tip is mushroomed. So that's super nice to know that that was the issue. So super happy with these guys. Definitely check out their website. Fully trust them with your parts. They will get you taken care of. Like I said, link down in the description below. You will not be dissatisfied. Alright, so as you saw there, got the first valve in, which is one of the exhausts. You just have to make sure that you put in the correct spring, because these 2 springs, they may look the same, but they're actually different. These are actually the same, but right here, one is going to be painted white, one's going to have a painted mark that looks a little orange brown. And they're actually 2 different springs too, physically. One's taller than the other, so make sure you put in the taller one for the exhaust, and then the shorter ones are going to go for the intakes. I accidentally installed the shorter one, and my valve was loose. I can literally move it with my hand up and down, so honest mistake. So don't make that whenever you guys are putting this thing together. Alright, all 4 corners are done. Super easy. Like I said, without that tool, it is hard. I mean, you shouldn't be doing it without that tool. I remember my very first rebuild, whenever I was like 15, I used 2 screwdrivers to pretty much push down on it, push as hard as I can, and have someone with a magnet catch the keepers. So super sketchy. You can definitely break things here doing it that way. So definitely get the tool. I will try to link it down in the description. So now I'm going to install this on the engine, and then we're going to start putting in the cam and getting everything buttoned up, and then I'm going to shim everything. From there, it's pretty much time to wrap up. Alright, so the head doesn't really want to seat the whole way, I think. Something funky's going on. I'm going to try to get it back off. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in the old shims, and that's going to be my starting point, even though I know it's going to be way off spec, but like I said, that's going to be my starting point, so we're going to start there. Well, I just discovered something super crazy. I don't know if you can tell, but this shim, somebody grinded this thing down so that it can fit into one of these exhausts. This is the first time. Wow, unbelievable. I'll use it. It'll at least give me a thickness reading. I'm still gonna swap them out, so don't do that, guys. All right, manual wants you to put some engine oil on the cylinder bolt, and we are going to torque these puppies down to 33 foot-pounds. Gonna do it in increments just so everything is even, a crisscross pattern. We're gonna set this probably to 15 foot-pounds first. And then I'm going to bump it up to 25. And last but not least, 33. Alright guys, so I just realized something. I'm sure some of you probably already caught this, but I stuck this thing in upside down. I definitely screwed up on that. So, in a blink of an eye, I'm going to take this top end back off, and I'm going to flip this thing back around. So, here we go. Just like that, got it all flipped over. So now, it's facing the right direction, and I can now easily put on the cam. Before, the cam wouldn't go on properly. There we go. So now that is sitting how it should. You don't have to have this perfectly in time because I know I'm going to be taking it apart, but I am going to torque this cam holder, and the torque spec on that is 12 foot-pounds. Alright, so now we're ready to get a reading on the gaps. Alright, so the manual says the intakes need to be 0.12 millimeters plus or minus 0.03. Exhaust needs to be 0.28 plus or minus 0.03. Well, that's loose. This one, left side, very loose. Let's see, 0.33. Alright, that's about 0.33. What you want to do, you want to feel a slight drag. You never want to shove it in there, because potentially you are compressing the spring, getting a wrong reading. You need to be able to slide it in gently, be able to pull and feel a slight drag. So I'd say this is about a 0.33, 0.34. So that's what we're going to record it at. Right, 0.34, 0.35. All right, we're going to call it that. 0.35 has a slight drag. 0.13. Slides in, but very loose. Same thing on this side, so let's bump up 1.15. So this would be still within spec. Still loose, getting a little tighter, but still loose. So let's go up one more. It has a slight drag, so we're going to call this 0.16. 0.20, let's see what happens. Let's go even higher, 0.28. Okay, too tight, 0.25, 0.25 for sure. 0.25. So the formula that I like to use, A equals B minus C plus D. So A is your new shim, B equals your recorded clearance, C equals specified clearance, and D equals your old shim thickness. And that formula is in the owner's manual for this engine. If you are just starting from nothing, you can throw some shims in there, and then you can use that formula. It'll get you somewhere. But since we are somewhat in the area of the specified numbers, what I can do is just take these off, measure the thickness of each shim, go into my shim kit, and just start going down or up a few sizes and placing them in, taking readings, and I'll be done. So we're probably going to go about 2 to 3 sizes at least on all 4 corners, and we'll take readings again and see where we're at. Alright, so I'm not going to go through the entire process on how to shim valves. I think you guys kind of get the point. But if you really want an in-depth, there's a lot of good videos out on YouTube right now. But possibly, if you really want, if you guys really want, I can make one on how I do it personally. Just leave a comment down below. But like I said, that formula is going to be your best friend. It'll get you where you want to be. I've been just doing it for so many years that I don't really need it. I just kind of go off of what's already here. I take measurements. It just works out. Just a little bit more experience. But anyways, leave a comment down below if you really want a video. I'll look into it. I'll try to make one. But in the meantime, I'm going to get this thing all back together, get it all shimmed out, and we'll pick back up whenever it's ready to be pretty much put back in a frame. All right, all 4 corners are shimmed into spec. But first of all, I wanted to show you guys how you have to have everything lined up. So if you look closely into here, right there, the flywheel has a line which has to line up with this little cutout in the actual threads. Then if we spin the engine around, all right, so right here we have a dot right on the gear, which has to line up with this little tooth that is sticking out on the case. So once you have those pieces all lined up, you have the stator side, the clutch side, you have to look at your cam, make sure that you installed it correctly. There's going to be 2 notches, one's going to be 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and there are 2 more down here. These all have to be parallel to this edge of the head. So if you look here, I have it perfectly aligned, and you have to take in consideration that there's going to be a chain tensioner here. Once that chain tensioner goes off, it's going to pull the gear this way, clockwise, just a hair. So there we have it, got this engine all complete. I'm missing a few things. I'm missing the oil filter because I had to steal this one and use it on another oil change that I was doing. I'm also missing this counterbalance seal right here. Gonna have to order up one of those. Thought I did, but I guess I was assuming I was gonna reuse the old one, but the old one was junk. So I'm gonna put an order in on that. Got everything attached here that I was missing. Got this coolant inlet outlet here. I believe this is the outlet, it's pumping coolant out. Got the sensor on here as well. Went ahead and torqued down most of these bolts, just kind of triple checking, make sure everything is on and tightened correctly. So now I'm ready to install this engine on the frame and finally get this thing started. When I'm ready to start the bike, I'll fill it up with E93, which is ethanol-free 93 octane. I get it at my local shop. Really good gas, runs super clean. Alright, got her all buttoned up for the first start. Obviously don't have everything on here. Alright, we got fuel, oil, coolant. Should be ready to go. So let's see how many kicks it takes to get this thing fired up. She wants to. Feeling the idle is set too low. Had to put on a proper boot. I gotta bring up the idle a little bit more. All right, so I got to mess around with the idle because that was with the choke or the cold start, whatever that thing is called. That's what that was on. So as soon as I turn it off, shuts off. So I got to bring up the idle a lot, and then that sounds pretty good. So I'm going to get to that. We'll be right back. All right, I think I got it sorted out. Choke is off. I know it's not a choke because it's fuel injected, but check it out. So there we have it. This bike is 100% complete, fully redone, top to bottom. Everything is running smoothly. There's no oil leaks or anything like that. All I have to do now is break it in a little bit more, drain the oil, put in some fresh oil, and give it back to the owner. If you guys like these types of videos, these longer ones, kind of more informative, these aren't really how-tos. Like I said, they're just to give you guys a little bit more information on rebuilds. If you do like them, let me know in the comments. If you don't, let me know as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you on the next one.